Okay, so I'm doing a deck tech, and then we're going to play a couple games. This is a Naya Zoo Obliterate deck that I've been working on. Somebody suggested that I try bluing with Obliterate in Modern, and this is what I came up with. So your goal here is to get a Planeswalker in play and cast Obliterate, which does not destroy Planeswalkers because it was printed before they exist. So your opponent will hopefully have no permanents at all, and you will have an Elspeth or a Xenagos. Alternately, you can have Dauntless Escort. Let me turn on preview. You can have Dauntless Escort, which you can sack before you cast Obliterate to give all your creatures indestructible, and so they will survive Obliterate, and then you can immediately attack with them, and your opponent should have no blockers left. You also have Fleecemane Lions, which can become indestructible with their monstrous ability. And you have Molten Vortex because Obliterate also does not destroy enchantments. So those are your goals to work with Obliterate. So you have Molten Vortex, Fleecemane Lion, Dauntless Escort, and the Planeswalkers. You also have some Path to Exiles. I chose Path to Exile over Lightning Bolt because there's a lot of stuff like Tasigur and Deceiver Exarch in the format that you really need to be able to kill, but that has more than 3 toughness. Additionally, if they fetch a basic out of your deck and then later in the game you cast Obliterate, they just have a slightly smaller chance of drawing that basic because it's just not in their deck anymore, so they'll be drawing other lands instead slightly less often. And then just to make the zoo part of the deck work, we have some Wild Nicodles, just a really good turn 1 play to put the pressure on. And we also have 2 Kasali Pride Mage to also be just another pressure, and also it can destroy artifacts and enchantments. So like in this format you have stuff like Amulet Bloom where you want to be able to destroy the amulet, or Lantern Control where you want to be able to destroy their ensnaring bridges. So we have 2 Kasali Pride Mage main deck to take care of those. Finally, we have Knight of the Reliquary. Knight is a good threat on its own. We're running 8 fetch lands, 7 fetch lands, and so he can be pretty big. We also have 2 Ghost Quarters that you can go and fetch, and then you have Ghost Quarter Life from the Loam working. But he also ramps your mana, so you can cast Obliterate a little bit quicker. I have found in this deck that Obliterate is more castable than you would expect, because a lot of the time Xenagos is going to be able to make 3 or 4 mana all by his own. So if you have a Xenagos, you can usually hit Obliterate very easily. If you have a Knight of the Reliquary, it's a little bit more difficult, but you should be able to do it. If you don't have either of those, there are some matchups where you're just probably not going to cast Obliterate. So like without a mana ramp spell against Burn, you're not going to be casting Obliterate. You should just board them out. The Life from the Loam Ghost Quarter package is in there for Tron. Life from the Loam also works with Molten Vortex. So you can play a Molten Vortex, it doesn't die to creature removal, and then you can just use Life from the Loam to keep buying back lands and throwing them at your opponent and your opponent's creatures. I did try Seismic Assault, but this is really a green-white deck that's just lightly splashing red for the Xenagos, and then the Xenagos will help you cast the Obliterate. So it's much easier to hit a single red mana, and a lot of the time you don't need to discard the full 3 lands all at one time. You want to play one of them and discard 2 of them so that you can keep developing your mana to hit Obliterate or cast 2 guys in one turn. So you don't need to have the triple red mana until very late in the game, whereas if you were running Seismic Assault, there would be a lot of the times where you would just want to have it on turn 3, and that makes your fetch lands very difficult. In addition to fetches and duels and Ghost Quarters, we also have 1 Slayer Stronghold to fetch with Knight of the Reliquary. I initially had Kessig Wolf run, but a lot of the time you would only be doing it for 2 or 3 anyway, and so the Vigilance and the Haste is much more important than the Trample usually is, because you can just play a Wild Nicodle and give it haste and hate for 5 out of nowhere, or you can give Knight of the Reliquary Vigilance, attack with it, and then use its sacrifice ability to go get another land, or you can just give a monstrous Fleecemane Lion Vigilance so you can attack 4/6, and then you have a 4/4 indestructible blocker back in the deck. And then I also am playing 1 Raging Ravine just so you can use your Knight of the Reliquary to go and fetch a pseudo creature when you really want just another threat to put on the board. You don't really activate Raging Ravine very much. 4 mana plus a land attacking is a lot of mana for this deck. You really would want 23 lands in this deck if you weren't running the Obliterates. But I just added the Raging Ravine as a 24th land because it's a creature sometimes. If you really need it to be, it can be. But most of the time, you're just going to have it as a red-green duel that comes into play tapped, which is not the greatest, but it's a good card anyway. So then let's look at the sideboard. We have the 3rd Qasali Pridemage, just for those same matchups, Amulet Bloom, Lantern Control, and it also comes in for Affinity. We have Ancient Grudge, which I bring in against Affinity, and I bring in against Lantern, but generally doesn't come in against Amulet Bloom, unless they're running something that makes me want to take out a lot of cards. Ancient Grudge is also pretty good against Tron, especially if they're the blue version. We have 3 Crumble to Dust, which is pretty much just for Tron. Occasionally I'll bring it in somewhere else if I see something that I really don't want to deal with. Like maybe Celestial Colonnade, I'll bring in 1 or 2 Crumble to Dust. But it's mostly just in there because Tron is a difficult matchup if they can keep you from getting Obliterate. We have 2 Gideon Jura, which comes in for all the just little small aggro and mid-range creature decks. So like other zoo decks, we would bring this in. If someone was playing goblins, we would bring this in. I don't bring it in against elves or merfolk because elves is too fast and merfolk has too much disruption. But against like Abzan or Jund, you can bring this in, and then you just have a threat that doesn't die to Lightning Bolt, doesn't die to Abrupt Decay, can kill Tarmogoyfs, can kill Olivias, can kill Siege Rhinos. He's a versatile card, but there's no room for him in the main deck. We have 3 Rending Volley, which is pretty much for Twin, but you can also bring it in against Soul Sisters if you want to do that. We have another Ghost Quarter, so again, for Tron or for decks with Celestial Colonnade, you can bring in the Ghost Quarter, have 3 Ghost Quarters and 3 Life from the Loams, and just try and keep them from using their lands for anything besides mana. There's not a lot of decks in the format right now that you can just completely lock out of mana with Ghost Quarter, Life from the Loam, but there are a lot of decks that rely on utility lands like Kessig Wolfrun or Celestial Colonnade or their own Tectonic Edges, and you can keep those under control with Ghost Quarter and just let you advance your game plan. Then finally, we have 2 Pyroclasm. We have 2 Pyroclasm that are in here. They come in definitely against Elves and Affinity. I usually don't bring them in against Merfolk. You can bring them in against Soul Sisters, but they can have draws with multiple Honor of the Peers where they just does nothing pretty quickly. So these are mostly in here for Elves and Affinity, and then if you see something else where you really want to bring them in, like maybe you want to bring them in against Infect and just try and catch them without a mutagenic growth, that can work sometimes. But they're just a useful card to have access to because a lot of people will build rogue decks, and generally you don't want to devote sideboard space to rogue decks specifically. But if you have something like Pyroclasm that you can bring in against Affinity, which is a real deck in the format, and then it's also good against whatever random brews people are testing with small creatures, then that's a good thing to have access to. So that is the deck. I have joined a league here, and we're going to go ahead and play 5 league matches back to back. And I'm going to just go ahead and do commentary for each of those. There shouldn't be a break in the video unless we have an issue with Magic Online, and then I'll separate this out into 2 videos while I boot back up. So the decks that I've found that you can actually keep up with pretty well are the more control-ish decks. So like Blue-White and Grixis Control, which is not Twin, you're able to keep up with those pretty well because eventually you do get to Obliterate. And then you have Obliterate and you have Life from the Loam to build up your mana faster than they can, and you can just eventually get threats into play. Tron is also a good match, but you can definitely lose if they have turn 3 Karn, which they sometimes do. Again, they're very soft to Obliterate. Obliterate gives you a lot of outs to matches that Zoo is traditionally not strong against in the late game, because Zoo is not a late game deck. A lot of Zoo decks will splash the other 2 colors so they can run Tribal Flames or Dark Confidant, just stuff to give them a little bit more reach. And what we're doing instead is running the Xenagos and the Obliterates. to try and just go over the top of what everyone else is doing. And Xenagos by himself is not a bad card. He puts on a lot of pressure, and he makes it so you can activate your Raging Ravine or Monstrous your Fleecemane Lions pretty close to for free just by using his plus ability. And then whenever you draw Obliterate, he just makes a bunch of mana, and you can do that. And putting out tasty 2/2s is also not bad. So hopefully we can find some matches on this league. I don't know how many people are playing it. Like, I don't know if active players is just how many people have matches left to finish, or how many people are still playing. But yeah, what we don't want to play against is we don't want to play against decks that can just kill us before Obliterate happens, or ignore our creatures entirely and stop Obliterate somehow. So like decks with Thoughtseize and a lot of removal are okay against us. That's a good game plan. And then decks like Infect that can just kill us out of nowhere, or Burn, or that can kill us out of nowhere, are very strong. So this hand has a Knight of the Reliquary and a Fleecemane Lion, so that's a good amount of pressure. It has a Path to Exile, which is removal. But then these three cards over here are not really doing very much. I'm going to keep this hand because I don't know what my opponent is playing. There are some matchups where I would definitely mulligan this. Like, if Molten Vortex is not going to kill any of his creatures, even if we draw red mana, then I would dump this hand. If Ghost Quarter is completely dead against him, like if he's playing Elves or something, then I would dump this hand. But we're going to see what he's on and then see if we can make this hand work. This hand would actually be fine, especially if we draw a fetch land. It'd be fine against something like Tarmo Twin, because we can path the Tarmogoyf and then play several threats, and then Ghost Quarter a land and try and disrupt them a little bit. So this actually may be a Tarmo Twin, so we'll see what happens. Elspeth is not a bad draw, but what I really want to do is hit a fetch land here. Just any fetch land in the deck will go and get me Sacred Foundry or Stomping Ground. Okay, so it could be Tarmo Twin, it could be Scape Shift. Yeah. We're going to probably path that in our turn unless we draw a way to cast Fleecemane Lion, and then I'll have to think about it. I don't want to untap and let him remand our path, especially if we don't have a second white mana to cast it again. And I really don't want to get the path mana leaked. Okay, so Life from the Loam is not terrible, but it's still not going to do anything until we actually draw a fetch land. It's possible this deck wants all 8 fetch lands, and I should just go ahead and pick up another Windswept Heath. So he's got a second Tarmogoyf. That could be an issue. Okay, so there's a red source. Unfortunately, it's not a fetch land, so it's not going to help us very much. I'm going to go ahead and cast Molten Vortex, and then I think I'm going to Ghost Quarter my mountain and go fetch a Plains. Do I want to do that? I'm going to wait and do that next turn and just cast the Elspeth. If I do it this turn, it doesn't really advance me very much. And he might play something that I want to kill with Molten Vortex. I don't know what that would be out of this deck. Like, maybe he goes Serum Vision, Snap Serum Visions. Okay, so there's another mountain. So we're going to play Mountain, tap it for mana, Ghost Quarter it. Need a basic Plains. Go ahead and cast this Elspeth. I'm expecting him to have a counterspell here. He does not. Okay, so let's just make a soldier. Pass the turn. So I don't know what his plan here is going to be. He may just have the Splinter Twin combo and just kill us. That would be a good reason to let Elspeth resolve. So there's the first half. He may just be planning on attacking Elspeth too. That's another possibility. Okay, it looks like he doesn't have the combo, so he's just going to attack Elspeth or try and kill me past it. Is this lethal on Elspeth? No, it's not. I would attack the Elspeth with Boast here. I'm assuming attacking with just the Glyph means he has another lightning bolt. Yeah. Okay, so we got 2 lightning bolts out of his hand with the Elspeth, but he's got just so many Tarmogoyfs. Yeah. So I don't want to use Life from the Loam this turn. I can cast Fleecemane Lion. These are 3/4s. Yes. I can cast Fleecemane Lion, take 6 damage down to 11, and then if I draw a land next turn, I can Monstrous the Fleecemane Lion, and then that'll keep up with the Tarmogoyfs. I think, though, I'm just going to cast Knight of the Reliquary. If it survives, I can turn this into a Sacred Foundry or a Stomping Ground. And he can't attack with the Tarmogoyfs into the Knight unless he has like an Electrolyze or something. I'm going to block the Deceiver. I think he probably has Electrolyze. He's already used 2 Lightning Bolts. And if I can neutralize these Tarmogoyfs, then they're like, if I can have this Giant Knight, then the Tarmogoyfs are not going to matter. Okay, so there's a Windswept Heath. So we cannot cast Quasali Pride Mage and Fleecemane Lion. And I don't want to use Life from the Loam. So what I'm going to do is just cast the Fleecemane Lion. Now I have the option here to sack this for a white source and attack with the Fleecemane Lion. I'm not going to block with it, but I'm not sure I want to pay. We go down to 10 or 8 to get a white source. I think I want this Windswept Heath to get me green and red. I definitely want another red source because I have Molten Vortex and Life from the Loam. So I think I'm just going to pass. So this is Snapcaster Bolt. The reason I didn't play the Quasali Pride Mage instead of the Fleecemane Lion, even though it was possibly had Snapcaster or just another bolt in hand, is Quasali Pride Mage can actually break up the twin combo. So I want to have access to that if he plays like a main phase Pestermite or Deceiver Exarch, then I have the Pride Mage. Or if there's a turn where I'm not really doing anything. So this is interesting. He's bouncing my Knight. I'm drawing a card. Yeah. So I'm going to take 10 damage here and go down to 1. So I can't use the fetch land, but I can sack the plains and get a dual land. And I think I'm going to get Raging Ravine. And this looks pretty bad. I don't think it was right to hold the Windswept Heath to kill a Snapcaster. That just doesn't seem like a good play. So here's Obliterate, but we don't have Xenagos and he bounced our Knight, so we're not casting that. We can Life from the Loam, Ghost Quarter, use the Ghost Quarter. No, our second mountain's in the graveyard. Yeah, we can't just do anything here. So you saw Path was good. It just went ahead and killed the first Tarmogoyf, but he had 2 more, so like sometimes that happens. I'm going to bring in the Rending Volleys. I'm going to bring in the Gideons. And then I'm going to take out Molten Vortex and Life from the Loam. So here is a valid sideboarding plan right here. I kind of want the other Pride Mage. So I think that's correct. And then we want to take out 1 card. Definitely not Path or Volley. Definitely not Gideon or Xenagos. I could take out a Fleecemane Lion or a Dauntless Escort. Let's take out a let's take out a Dauntless Escort. It's a little bit slower. Okay, so this hand is 1 land but 2 paths. And a Fleecemane Lion. I'm on the play, so I think I'm going to mulligan this. This hand is fine. Basic Mountain is the worst land in the deck after we board out Molten, but we have a fetch land and a dual land, so this is fine. And another Fleecemane. I'm going to put on the bottom because I want to find a removal spell. So let's play the Foundry. And then we have the option of fetching a basic forest with Wooded Foothills. Okay. I think I am going to fetch a basic forest. Our mana is less important with Molten Vortex out of the deck. I want to keep up my life total because he has bolts and Tarmogoyfs as a plan B. And later on, if the Knight of the Reliquary survives, I can turn the forest into a Temple Garden anyway. Okay, so let's go ahead and attack with the Fleecemane Lion and see if he lightning bolts it. If he uses the lightning bolt on the lion, I'm going to play the knight. If he doesn't, I'm going to play the escort. I don't want to lose my knight to a lightning bolt, so I want to hold on to it until I draw another fetch land. So one consideration here is because we fetched a basic instead of a Temple Garden, we don't have mana for Elspeth. Looting, okay. We don't have mana to cast our Elspeth next turn, but I do have the Knight of the Reliquary, so we're going to be casting a spell on that turn, regardless of what land we draw or if we draw a spell. And with the Dauntless Escort in play, he can't bolt the Knight of the Reliquary because I'll just sack the Dauntless and give the Knight indestructible. Okay, he's just going to bolt the Dauntless. Interesting. So I wonder if he has Anger of the Gods. Interesting. So Anger of the Gods would be a reason to lightning bolt Dauntless Escort there. So I'm going to play Ghost Quarter and Knight and keep up Ghost Quarter. That way, if he has Anger of the Gods, I can sack the Ghost Quarter on my mountain, turn it into a plains, and then I'll put 2 more lands in the graveyard, which makes my knight a 5/5, which will survive Anger. I'll lose the Fleecemane Lion, but I'll have a knight in play. What is this? Huntmaster. I can definitely beat a Huntmaster. Okay. It's like sad that we drew Raging Ravine on this exact turn, but I'm gonna go ahead and monstrous the Fleecemane Lion. And just attack with the lion. Because I want to go and fetch a white mana source. Because we didn't show him Xenagos or Obliterate in game 1, there's no reason for him to think we're anything other than a normal zoo deck. Okay, so this is 2 damage. Yeah, so Knight will survive. So he's going to have stuff like Anger of the Gods, Pyroclasm, and Huntmaster, maybe Kitchen Finks that are good against regular zoo decks, but don't really interfere with our late game plan of Obliterate. It's possible he even boarded out some of the twin combo because he saw we had main deck paths, which would make it very difficult for him to win without a Keranos, which he has. So Keranos doesn't like just crush us here. It just means Obliterate is less effective. He's attacking. That's really aggressive. Like we go to 11. I'll sack this. Do I want a Sacred? No, I want a Temple Garden. Or a Slayer's Stronghold. So let's think about Slayer's Stronghold. We're doing 8 damage next turn. Slayer's Stronghold would make it 10, 11 with sacking the Knight. I think I'm just going to get a Temple Garden and play Elspeth. Gideon, interesting. Yeah, Gideon is much better than Elspeth here. So we're just going to play Gideon and blow up his Ravager of the Fells. And then I'm just going to attack for 8. And then Keranos can't kill Gideon. He would need to have like a Lightning Bolt or an Electrolyze to back it up. And then that leaves him dead on board to the creatures. So he needs an answer to Gideon and with the Knight. So let's animate here. I could have played Elspeth and jumped the Fleecemane Lion, and then the Fleecemane Lion is lethal on its own. But if he has Cryptic Command to tap my guys, yeah. If he has Cryptic Command to tap my guys, then I don't want him to also counter Elspeth. And I could play Elspeth and then animate Gideon, but then he's at 1 life, so it's not lethal. So right now, my expectation is that he's going to kill Gideon if he can with this Keranos trigger. What does this mean? I don't understand what's going on. I shouldn't have any damage replacement triggers. Yeah. Magic Online is just not understanding what's going on, but it processed it correctly. Okay, so what I'm going to do is jump the Fleecemane Lion. Yeah, and he's dead to that. My plan, if he Cryptic to tap again, like with a Snapcaster, was I was going to get in with Raging Ravine. So he boarded into a more mid-range version with Keranos and Huntmaster. Molten Vortex can kill Huntmaster, but I don't think that's important because I still have the paths. Is Wild Nacatl still good? I think it is. Solid Pride Mage might be weak if he boarded out the twin combo. No, I'm just going to roll with the way I had it and see how he reacts. Okay, so this hand is Forest, Wild Nacatl, Slayer, Stronghold, and then we really need to draw mana. Like, you can consider the second Obliterate is always a mulligan. I'm going to mulligan this hand and then keep this one and put Temple Garden on the top, even though I would rather have a mountain or a fetch land. Like, we have these wild Nacatls, they're only 2/2s, but I have 3 creatures that I can cast. What I think I'm going to do is cast both of the wild Nacatls and see if he has Anger of the Gods. Because we didn't really give him a good chance to play it last game. He might have had it in his hand. Yeah. So let's attack for 2. See what he does. He takes 2. Play the wild Nacatl. Remand. Play Temple Garden untapped. Play the wild Nacatl. So if he has Anger of the Gods right here, we're actually in a little bit of trouble because this Pride Mage is not going to get the job done by itself. Okay. Let's see what he puts on top. Bottom. Top. Okay. So I'm going to wait another turn to play the Pride Mage. Roast my Nacatl. Okay, so that means he probably didn't put Anger on top, so I'm going to play the Pride Mage. This lets us get in for an extra point of damage. On this turn. And I'm assuming he's going to play a creature next turn, and I want to path it. And if that creature is a Hunt Master, then Pride Mage will let the Nacatl attack through. Okay, I think he is digging for Anger of the Gods, so he's playing as if it were in his deck. And he put a card on top of his library, but we're going to path that guy and make him shuffle. Notice that we ended up with 2 Obliterates again anyway, so maybe we should have kept the first hand. But I think it was correct to mulligan that first hand. And it's not like we're just completely dead here. We have good threats. Okay, so there's the Anger. No artifacts or enchantments, so we're just going to let that happen. Let's pop out graveyards to keep an eye on Snapcasters. Land. Lion is also okay. It's possible that when I board in the Gideons, I want to bring in the extra Ghost Quarter just to have that 25th land. If he doesn't have a Lightning Bolt for the Fleecemane Lion, we have a decent shot of winning this game because Path will protect us from the combo. Okay, he has the Bolt. So now we really just want to draw lands and small creatures. Elspeth is not a good draw. Like, we already had a Planeswalker. And, like, this is the drawback. Like, the Obliterate gives you a very powerful end game, but sometimes you just mulligan and you get stuck on lands and you can't use it. Stomping Around is good. So right now we're racing this Desolate Lighthouse. We need to beat him before he can assemble the combo or before he can stake a Keranos. One more land. Okay. So, my guess is that he has Cryptic Command, or at the very least he has a Snapcaster for Remand, but we need to kill him before that Desolate Lighthouse wins him the game. So I'm going to just have to cast Elspeth, and he does have Snapcaster Remand, which is much better for us than if he had Cryptic. And note that this is pretty safe to assume that he does not have Cryptic. Like, there's no reason to hold Cryptic in this scenario because he could draw a card with the Cryptic just like he draws off the Remand. Putting Snapcaster into play is not really doing much. And he wants to get rid of this Elspeth permanently because it is going to be able to kill him. And also, if he had Cryptic, then he could Cryptic and then have Snapcaster Cryptic next turn, which is just very strong. I want to get a basic mountain. Basic forest is slightly better, but I want to have a second red just in case we eventually get here. So what are our options here? We can play Gideon and kill the Snapcaster. We can play Gideon and plus, which protects us from the Splinter Twin combo, or we can play Elspeth and make a soldier. I think I'm going to use all of our mana this turn and play the Gideon, and then I'm just going to plus it if it resolves. Oh yeah, he's going to loot first. He's going to try and find another remand or maybe a mana leak if he's running those. Now I'm going to mine... Well, he could exactly have the combo with 3 mana left. Yeah, let's go ahead and plus. Because this lets us just sit here. Like, he needs to have Deceiver Exarch, Splinter Twin, bounce spell for the Gideon to kill us next turn. And if he has that, then we can path his Deceiver Exarch. So what is this? Snap Bolt the Gideon? Snap Bolt me, maybe? Snap Bolt Gideon. Okay, he's going to put Gideon at 1. And then he probably has an Electrolyze or a Bolt. What is this? Thragtusk? Interesting. Usually they have Huntmaster or Thragtusk. They don't usually have both in my experience. So I'm not sure like what his plan is. So that's 1 toughness on the Gideon. So what we can do here is play Elspeth, make a token, path Thragtusk when it attacks, and plus Gideon. Let's see if our Elspeth resolves. We can't path because we need both our mana. So I'm going to do this. And I'm going to plus the Gideon again. This is slightly risky because if he has another lightning bolt, he can just kill the Gideon and attack my face, and Gideon plus didn't do anything. But what we can do now is block Thragtusk, Rending Volley a Snapcaster. What is this? Okay, he's going to Lightning Bolt kill Gideon. There's no damage prevention effects. Okay. And then I just want to protect Elspeth here. Like, Elspeth is my plan to win this game. Okay, he's going to loot. He's going to look for something to kill the soldier. And he found it. How many bolts is that? 2 lightning bolts in a roast and an anger. So he's still got a good amount of removal left, so we're going to have to worry about that. So let's see how he plays this. Just everything at Elspeth. Okay, so we don't need to use this Rending Volley. Our Elspeth is down. Forest. Yeah, this is looking pretty rough. I'm going to path him. No. If the last card in his hand is Cryptic Command, then I want to path him now. Anything else, I want to path him in his upkeep. So let's step in an upkeep. And we will path the Thragtusk. Because I don't want to have Thragtusk in play when I obliterate. So we have to get rid of it at some point. So we might as well do it as early as possible. So he doesn't Lighthouse in response. So he either doesn't care about Thragtusk, or he doesn't have Cryptic Command in his deck. That just seems completely impossible. I'm going to go ahead and kill one of these. My game plan now is just get to obliterate. Like, that's all I want to do, is just survive until I can cast this obliterate. And right now, if we draw 2 lands in a row and neither of them are a fetch land, we can do that. Is this Vendilion Click? Okay, so that puts enough of a clock on us that we can't just play lands and kill him. So we're going to have to draw something, and I think we're just dead. How could I have played this game differently? I could have just played one guy at a time into Anger of the Gods, but I don't think that would do it. Like, it would have slowed us down enough that we would have one guy on the board and he would play a Thragtusk. Could have kept the opener. Could have mulled to 5. Like, you can always mulligan differently. That's always an option. So you need to think about how mulligans work. I've got some crud in my eye. So what we need to do here is just draw a basic land or a Ghost Quarter and just obliterate him. It's unfortunate that he knows that we obliterate is coming because he played the Vendilion Click. So he can sandbag lands. If he has a bolt, we're just dead. Snap Bolt, yeah. Okay. So that was pretty standard for how Twin plays out. Sometimes you get the obliterate and you win. Sometimes they combo you and you lose. Sometimes you just beat them down with 3/3s. But you saw most of the things that were going on. So let's go ahead and queue up for another match. I think when I bring in the Gideons from now on, I do want to try the extra Ghost Quarter. Just to have another way to hit double white and just to have another way to hit extra lands. Make sure we're still recording. Okay, looks good. I'm going to go grab a drink. I will be right back. Okay, so you saw Tarmo Twin, how that matchup works out. We won a game, we lost 2 games, all the games we were involved in. I'd like to see if we can get matched up against a Tron deck so you can see how the Crumble to Dust work. They're not in there to completely lock the opponent out of the game. We just get rid of one of their Tron lands and then they have to cast their spells on curve just like we are. And our 8 mana spell beats most of their spells. Once we have resolved or Crumble to Dust, we really only need to worry about Karn and Ugin. If all of the queues are going to take like 3 minutes to find opponents in, I may just do one more match and record another video on the Saturday when I expect more people to be online. And then I can just break the video into 2 parts. Because honestly, watching 4 hours of matches is a little tiresome on its own. I get that. So it's probably better to break into 2 anyway. Especially if we're going to just sit here having downtime, waiting for people to finish their matches and start new ones. So if we can play against Tron or one of the other aggressive decks or Jund, that would be another good deck to play against. Those are popular decks in the format, and I can let you know how we work against those. But it's modern, so the format is wide open. Like, we're playing a deck that has Wild Nicodle and Obliterate in it. You can really do whatever you want as long as your deck has a plan. It would be funny to play against Lantern. The Lantern matchup is hilarious. You just basically you mulligan to Obliterate, and then they spend the entire game putting Obliterates into your graveyard with Lantern and Shredders. I'm going to give this up until 5 minutes, and then we're just going to publish this with the one match. Maybe a little bit over 5 minutes. I don't have anything pressing that I have to do. I really want to get a couple matches recorded on this. I don't like to publish single match videos. Okay, so yeah, looks like we're going to do 2. Maybe we'll try for a 3rd. Okay, so I don't recognize this guy's name. We're going to be on the draw. So yeah, this is a pretty reasonable hand. Like, the first Obliterate is not great, but we do have the Xenagos, so it's not completely dead. And then we just have Elspeth and Vortex. I'm going to play the Sacred Foundry first. Sorry. I'm going to play the Sacred Foundry first and probably drop the Vortex. Unless he plays something crazy, like turn 1 Pithing Needle on Molten Vortex. With Gataxian Probe would be the reason to do that. And then I want to save this so that I know whether I need to get which colors. Okay, so yeah, this looks like a reasonable start. That Fleece Mane's going to make our curve work a lot better. I don't want to ram the Fleece Mane line into Spell Snare, so I'll have to see what he does. I don't know how League works. I hope this is not the same guy. I don't want to go back and check the video. We'll see. So he gets a Breeding Pool. Not a Scalding Tarn. So it's probably not the same guy. Unless he plays Sulfur Falls here. Could also be a different deck. Okay, so actually we're playing against Scapeshift. I believe I've played against Scapeshift twice, and I'm 1-1 against it. They don't have a lot of ways to enter. Okay, this is Bring to Light Scapeshift, I believe. It could be something entirely different, but we're going to proceed as if it was Bring to Light Scapeshift, which means we want to go ahead and put pressure on them, or make them use their removal spells to deal with our guys. If he plays like a Sakura Tribe-Elder or a Search for Tomorrow, then it's definitely Scapeshift. Yeah. So what this is it's Scapeshift splashing another color for Bring to Light to give them extra Scapeshifts. And I'm not going to use this Molten Vortex. Like, I could have killed the Sakura Tribe-Elder pre-combat to get my Lion through, but I actually need these lands because the way that we beat them is to hit Obliterate before they can Scapeshift us. And, like, he's already on 6 lands. At 18, I think you need 7. It's unfortunate that we didn't draw more creatures. Like, if we could have played a creature last turn, Xenagos would be a lot better. You might have Cryptic here. Remand. Okay. Yeah. So like you can't tell it really from looking at the board, but I would say that we are pretty solidly losing this game. Okay. I think that means we're dead. Like he's just gonna go get Valakut, like play a land, go get Valakut and a bunch of mountains. Yeah, we're dead. Okay. So that is what I thought it was. Um, Scapeshift is one of the decks that we really do not have a good sideboard plan against. Um, we have to leave in paths because they can bring in Primeval Titans. Molten Vortex doesn't do anything, so we can cut those. The considerations here are a Ghost Quarter and a Quasali Pride Mage, or Gideon's, or some mix of those. And I think I'm going to bring in the Ghost Quarter and the Pride Mage, and we're just going to try and rush them down. I don't know how the Amulet Bloom match works out. I've only played it once and I won, so it's possible that that is a worse match than Scapeshift. Otherwise, I think I feel comfortable saying that Scapeshift is one of our worst matchups. The only deck that I think is comparable to Scapeshift might be Infect, because Infect is resilient to Path and doesn't care about our creatures at all. So we would definitely like to play first, and we're definitely going to mulligan this. We need pressure. This is fine. Obviously, if the ghost... Oh, that's perfect. Yeah. So what we're going to have to do here is skip playing Wild Nicodle on turn 1, which really sucks. But we can curve 2, 3, and then Nicodle on 4, hopefully with something else. So we do want to play the Wooded Foothills, but we don't want to sack it because we know we have a forest on top of our library. So we want to draw the forest, and then we have the choice here to play Pride Mage or Nicodle. And I'm going to play Nicodle because that lets us keep our life total at 19, which is one more land to kill us with Scapeshift. And we don't have any other fetches in our hands, and we don't have any shocks in our hands, and we have mana to play everything except Obliterate. So it's possible we can play this game and avoid having to fetch or shock again. So we want to get a Sacred Foundry tapped. So there's a fetch. I don't want to use it. If we play Pride Mage, we attack for 4 this turn and 5 next turn. If we play Dauntless, we attack for 3 this turn and 6 next turn, but we play around Anger of the Gods. So let's go ahead and run the Dauntless. So we're going to get probably remanded here. Or lightning bolted, but remand off the basic island. Okay. So we're going to go ahead and attack with the Nicodle. This game we are not losing as hard. Like, he hasn't played any ramp except for 1. So a lot of this game is going to come down to what he plays on this turn. Like, if he plays 2 Sakura Tribe Elders, then we're in a lot of trouble. If he suspends another Search for Tomorrow and casts a Search for Tomorrow, we're in some trouble. If he just Lightning Bolts or Nicodle, then we're not in as much trouble. Or he could just like electrolyze us and dig, and then in that case we get to use the fetch. Okay, if he passes here, then I think we're pretty good. Okay, so there's another fetch that can get Temple Garden. so yeah, let's do that. So there's not another remand. He doesn't have mana leak. Usually they don't run mana leak. They just have remands and cryptics. What would I like to draw here? Xenagos would be very good. Elspeth would not be bad. Yeah, we're looking pretty good. Okay, so this is like what a Bring to Light is going to be cast. And then he's going to go get like a Damnation. Oh, I should have. No. Hunting Wilds. Interesting. Okay. So we may be dead next turn, is the thing. Elspeth. Okay, so let's go get a basic plains. Like at this point, he has enough lands that fetching doesn't do anything different. We're going to get this. We are going to jump the Nicodle and attack for 9. So now he can't play an untapped Shockland if that was important. But I think, again, we're just dead. Like, we don't have any way to really interact with Scapeshift besides killing him before he can do it. So I expect us to be dead here. If he taps all of his mana and floats, then we're dead. This is Sakura Tribe, fetch. He may just be showing off and we're still dead here. So there's a Valakut. This Bring to Light for... Oh no, so this is Scapeshift. So let's count. So he's going to sack 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Get 8 mountains and deal 24 to us with Valakut. So yeah. I think the Scapeshift is our worst matchup. Like, Splinter Twin is also a combo deck, but they interact with Path, and a lot of the time they board into a mid-range deck. Scapeshift is just a pure combo deck. Amulet Bloom is also like a pure combo deck sometimes, which makes it harder to beat them sometimes. But they do have draws where if you can blow up their Amulet with a Kastali Pride Mage, then you just steal a win. So I'm going to go ahead and call it for right now. I may record later this evening, or I may record tomorrow and get the rest of these matches in. But that was how you saw the deck. So like against Splinter Twin, we can compete with them. Against Scapeshift, we're very weak. If I knew I was going to be playing a lot of Scapeshift, I would absolutely not recommend this deck. I don't even think that there are reasonable changes that you can make to the deck that would make it good against Scapeshift. You just need to play an entirely different deck.